All right, everybody, for game three, we got another IQ Sultans matchup. So two big teams going head-to-head here. We're going to have Garretz versus the BlackBoss. Both need no introduction. Again, just two great players in the game. Very excited to see these two go head-to-head and face off here in this playoff series for LBR. So again, fighting for a spot in the top two to actually give themselves a chance to win out the entire LBR for this season. So without further ado, BlackBoss and Garretz is up next.
So there's an Ionia deck and a separate Targon deck on the side of Garretz, and then Boss has just elected not to run Ionia rather.
And we do have the game getting started, so let's go ahead and get on over to BlackBoss versus Garretz here.
These have been two of the longest standing Bilgewater decks in Legends of Runeterra. I mean, obviously Nab is up there as well, but Nab has really kind of changed its shape a lot more often than either of these decks have. So these are sort of the two that have stayed the same the most. And honestly, I'm a big fan of both of these, which is kind of weird because they don't feel like they play to the core Bilgewater mechanics, you know, that actual nab and the plunder and things like that.
Yeah, it's funny because, pilfered goods and all that, before it was nerfed, plunder was such a viable strategy, and now we're still seeing a ton of Bilgewater. Bilgewater in general is still a great region, but like you said, it's straying away from that plunder strategy. It's usually just this TF Swain, and then Deep in general still seeing play since its original release.
And you can't blame them. I mean, every nab card other than Sleight of Hand has been nerfed at this point. Merchant down to a 2/1, Pilfered Goods up to 3 mana, the Allegiance change on the Yordle Grifter. And I mean, yeah, the TF Swain and the Bilgewater variants of Deep really haven't been hit at all. I actually think that Deep might be one of the only decks that has been around as long as it has that has never hit a nerf. Because honestly, I don't really count the Dredgers going from a 2/1 to a 1/1 as like a nerf for that deck.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was just like a quality of life type thing for the game. But yeah, no, there really hasn't been any nerfs. That was about as nerfy as they get with Dredgers, and everything else has pretty much stayed the same. And with that said, I think Deep has stayed just about as competitive the entire time. Like, it hasn't. I think it was technically like an S tier deck when it first came out, but that was just because everybody was playing it. Eventually, things settled. It became more of like a low A tier deck, and even now, I mean, it's kind of like a low A tier, maybe high B tier deck. It's just kind of chilling, doing its thing.
I want to say that, you know, during that format where it was all Deep, Karma, Ezreal, and Frostbite midrange, that was probably the only format where I would have considered Deep tier 1, and ever since then, I've always kind of considered it to be the best tier 2 deck.
The best okay, all right, yeah, no, I could get on board with that, yeah. And that's kind of exactly where I've put it in. I don't necessarily make tier lists, but if I in my head, anyways, that's kind of where I put it. Where it's not a top competitor, but it can compete with the top competitors, and it can, in certain niches, kind of be sort of a tech choice versus certain matchups.
And so far, we haven't really seen it do a whole lot against Garretz. So, I mean, we did see a Thorny Toad die. And that is not something that happens too often here. So BlackBoss already accelerated a lot more than he would normally be. I'm a little curious to see if we're going to just see a kill straight away onto this Maokai with the combination of spells here. Is that a main decked
Sat Magic?
Island Navigator?
Oh, okay. I was like...
Yeah, there's a one of Island Navigator in this TF Swain out of Garretz.
I mean,
tell me about this one, SJW. How are you feeling about this one? I mean, that's a hell of a one-drop to rip.
I don't hate it, namely because Petty Officer's a 3/1 now. So Island Navigator actually feels like a little bit better because Petty Officer's a 3/1. Having 4 health and having Scout feels really good. So maybe this card has actually just kind of gotten a sort of buff because of the Petty Officer nerf.
What a wild sentence you just said.
I know. It sounds weird, but like it's still getting you a 1-cost unit, and on top of that 1-cost unit is also granted Scout, which is usually going to be an advantage regardless of what 1-cost unit, because you can use that Scout unit to at least pass priority. And a lot of times, especially in larger tournaments and more competitive environments, that's a big deal. And a 2/4, as we know with Laurent Protege, I mean, 4 health is a lot harder to get off the board than any other health totals. So I don't know. I like it. I actually really do like it.
All right. I'm concerned that Garretz, the way that he's posturing his hand right now, looks like he wants to just let this Maokai live. Doesn't really want to commit the resources of the Death's Hand and the Ravenous Flock, especially when you run the risk of running into a Glimpse Beyond. Oh, wait, no, you don't, because those are committed to the Endure deck on the side of BlackBoss. You are more or less totally safe to just take out this Maokai at will. And I don't think you want to let this sit around too long. It looks like he is actually going to decide to fire it off this turn. You know, let him get a little bit of value. Wanted to get that Navigator down for a good open attack, but now has decided to commit the resources to it. And honestly, his hand's looking kind of small.
Yeah, this is... All right, having to commit 2 things to this Maokai feels a little bit bad for Garretz, too, knowing that there is another Maokai in hand on the side of BlackBoss, which is exactly why BlackBoss decided to play that Maokai. I mean, we do have other ways to get it out on the board. Maokai is a self-fulfilling prophecy. He will go ahead and help his own level up condition. So I do like that from BlackBoss, and that play also garnering him the extra tools coming out on Garrett's side just to get rid of that Maokai, which you do have to prioritize. And yeah, just going to go ahead and stick the next one too, it looks like.
Yeah, Maokai, the hero of his own story, sticking the landing. There's nothing that Garretz has for this. We'll have to try and rely on Boss sort of misplaying this into taking some unit damage to open up the Noxian Guillotine. I mean, this is... House Spider has always been one of the cards that I criticize most in TF Swain, because you do run into a lot of situations in a lot of different matchups where this card just looks really useless. Sure, you're wide on board here, but staring down a Thorny Toad and a Dead Bloom Wanderer, as well as this Maokai, you know that you're never actually in a position to try and out-aggro your opponent with all of these 1 and 2 health units. Especially, you know, we had seen 3 Withering Wail in the list for Boss, as well as those Make It Rains, which is something that you're going to have to consider. And I really think we are approaching the point where Petty Officer just is not the most effective card to run in this TF Swain deck. It has been underperforming across the weekend so far since that nerf.
Yeah, that 1 health is a big deal. I mean, it opens it up to so many things. You know, Vile Feast, as an example that we see in hand, would be able to kill it. Withering Wail, and it can just get chump blocked by so many things. And especially in this matchup in particular, you have the Thorny Toad, which we're now actually pulling the Petty Officer with that vulnerable from the hired gun. I mean, this is a huge change now. This is getting rid of what would have been a 3-2, and that's a huge swing in tempo that would not have happened previously.
I think I had talked to you about this on Thursday when we were casting, where we were seeing Make It Rain cut from Pirate aggro lists because we were seeing Petty Officer cut from Twisted Fate Swain lists. And I had mentioned that, you know, maybe now that Make It Rain is being cut across the board, we see the Petty Officer come back in, but now we've started to see Make It Rain come back into the Pirate aggros as well. Some people, usually it's run as a one-of, some people are still playing it in multiple copies, you know, up to 3, and the Make It Rains coming out of this deep deck could just be an adaptation of, yeah, Petty Officer is back in the meta, and it's this weird sort of cat and mouse game that all of these deck builders are playing of, do you think today is the day where people bring the Make It Rain? Am I safe to bring Petty Officer, or do I just switch over to 3 Island Navigators? But looking at the deck as a whole, especially as the situations start to play out, this Petty Officer is just really starting to look really awkward. It's one of those cards that you only played like Jack the Winner because it was overpowered, and if it's not overpowered, it's not good enough.
Yeah, all the more reason, like I said, why I like Island Navigator a little bit more. And I like what you mentioned with the Make It Rain, you know, kind of cat and mouse coming in and out. It's no different than something like Avalanche. You know, we've seen Avalanche fall out of favor and then come back into favor. Usually comes into favor when ramp decks are, you know, a little higher performing than usual. But Avalanche, not always the AoE of choice to go with sometimes in that deck, right? There are other options. There are Withering Wail. Same thing with the BlackBoss, there's Withering Wail as well. You could just go 3 Withering Wail and be okay with that AoE, but no, BlackBoss opting to go with the Make It Rain because the meta has dictated, okay, we need that additional removal for these 1 health units. And wow, I mean, talk about this board on the side of BlackBoss. Garretz is not going to be doing anything anytime soon, but we do have a Riptide Rex. Problem is, I don't know if we're going to have a way to activate it on turn 8.
I think a lot of this game for Garretz is actually going to depend on what pops out of this Mage Seeker Conservator, but
yeah.
I feel like you need to get that popped off before the Maokai levels, which is, if I saw that correctly, currently sitting at 18 out of 25. Yeah. This salvage should put it up to 20. We do still have this Thorny Toad on field, so this Maokai potentially sitting at 22, given the information available, going to actually be 21 after this Sapling dies for the turn as well, and I mean, Garretz, this is not a winning hand if the Maokai level up goes off. Sometimes you can piece together what you already have to try and get a win. This isn't it. And Riptide, historically, probably one of its worst matchups is the deep deck. That Nautilus soaks up so many hits, the large sea monsters. There's a chance that you'll push a lot of damage onto your opponent's board and not actually kill anything.
Yeah, this is looking bad for Garretz. And I think BlackBoss kind of had a good read on Garretz from the start in playing. You know, obviously he could play the first Maokai because he had the second in hand. You know that you're safe. The first Maokai will be able to kind of expedite the level up process. But I think BlackBoss was so confident in playing that second Maokai because he knew the way that Garretz was playing, Garretz didn't have a easy or good way to deal with the Maokai. And very smart by BlackBoss, because now it looks like with the Direct Dredgers, we are going to see this Maokai almost certainly level up next turn. And if Garretz attacks, it will level up this turn. So I imagine Garretz will not be attacking this turn.
Curious on how he's going to do it, because he actually did okay, there's just the Jettison. I was going to say he did overwrite the Sapling, so that is one unit not dying for the Maokai, but yeah, the Jettison just going to level it. Says, you know what, I'm actually going to put you on a clock here on turn 7, you know, knowing how turn 8 can play out. And I like this a lot, because if you waited until next turn, if you didn't immediately start off your turn by leveling the Maokai, Garretz could play a Leviathan and search out a Swain, and that is sort of the only way you can imagine him coming back in this game. And yeah, we're just going to see the surrender now that the Swains are no longer in the deck.
It looks like Garretz is thinking about it, and yep. Garrett's going to take your approach, Boulevard, and save himself a few minutes of time and go ahead and click that surrender button. Not going for the misplay.
I gotta say, I experimented with Turbo Deep after I saw Random 7HS running it in the Targon Invitational, but after, you know, a couple, not a couple hundred, but maybe close to like 50 games on that deck, I really liked it, but I really missed Maokai.
Yeah, Turbo Deep is, I like that version. I think it's fun, but I always feel like the Maokai version is just the better version. It gives you an alternate win con too, right?
Yeah, and some players play decks differently. We saw it a lot with Nab. As a Nab player, I always really leaned heavily on the Sejuani over the Gangplank, and when it comes to Deep, I feel like I actually lean on the Maokai a lot more than I lean on the Nautilus.
Yeah, I think Maokai, and that's the thing, like Maokai, even if you know that you're not going to go for that Maokai win condition a little bit later on in the game, you can play it early to try to stave off aggression if you need to. And it's just good. Like, I mean, a 2-1 with Challenger, if you summon a unit, like, that's just a good card. Plus, it gets you more towards your deep strategy.
I mean, you know me. I'm running missed calls. If you want to
exactly
and flop my Maokai on turn 4, that baby's coming right back.
I love running missed call in deep. I do not understand why people do not run it in every version of deep decks.
I've actually started running it, and I had mentioned that Thresh Leona deck from yesterday. You don't get a lot of like on summon value out of Mistcall, but if you expend 2 cards to kill my Ravoon and then I just bring it right back as a 5/5, that's kind of devastating for a number of decks. I'm just sort of starting to like Mistcall more and more in any kind of mid-range shadow.
Whoa, back up, Boulevard. All right,
I'm getting hypey out here.
Calm it down, take it back a notch. All right, Jesus.
I mean, there's just so many use cases for the card, especially as you know. A lot of times you can have a champion die, play another copy of it, miscall it right back. Anytime that you can get 2 champions on the field, and usually that's a lot easier than Shadow Isle because you have Thresh and Harrowing and Rekindler and things like that. But yeah, it feels actually pretty easy to do, but not going to be an option for either of these players, as we are switching over to the Demacia Mirror that we saw really harshly go in the way of the Fiora player earlier on in the day.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So we'll see if BlackBoss is able to pick up a win here or not. I imagine Garretz will be picking this one up just because of all the extra barrier spells and combat tricks that we already start to see in hand. Not only that, this curves out decently too. We did not have a 2-drop, but we do have the Fiora on turn 3 as well as a Shen. And although BlackBoss is on 2 mana and has a single combat, nothing to remove this Fiora immediately that he can pair that with on field. So Fiora feels good here going into turn 4 with Shen and actually passing black over to BlackBoss. We'll see if BlackBoss is actually just going to pass back, kind of taking that bluff and not allowing Garretz to get this Fiora down.
I do like the pass out of Garretz. You really don't want to give Boss the opportunity to just push a little bit of free damage onto your Fiora. The 2 mana that you have doesn't offer up any kind of barrier spell. And I think that Boss has to be cognizant of the fact that if you do go for the attacks here, Sure, you take out a Fleet Feather Tracker, you push a little bit of damage onto your opponent, but it gives Garretz the opportunity to set up Shen Fiora over the course of the next 2 turns. And the single combat, as you mentioned, you don't have anything on the field that's going to be able to stop that. Maybe you are hoping to get down that Solari Shield Bearer to start off the turn, single combat the Fiora before we can actually go into combat with it with the Shen. And that's not a bad play. It does mean you're not going to have a blocker for the Shen, but instead we're just going to go for the riposte onto the Fleet Feather Tracker. Didn't even really consider this one. That Shen Fiora looking a little bit too juicy to me, and I tunneled in on it, but Garretz keeps his vision wide and goes for the barrier spell.
No, this is great, and this is much better than getting Fiora down, because now you're able to get Shen down as well as pair it with this Fleet Feather Tracker here to get a barrier and a challenger to basically probably just pick off this other Fleet Feather on the other side of the field. So it looks like Garrett's thinking about playing the Fiora instead, though. I don't know, man. I feel like you go for the Shen there and just get that easy challenge.
I think that Garretz wants to leave open the possibility of a Fiora win condition this game. And is going to go for this kill onto the Fleet Feather Tracker, because from here I can develop the Shen and I can start to get the Fiora, a little bit more online, but we should just see it die to the single combat here on this Shield Bearer. And honestly, I want to talk about Fleet Feather Tracker for a second. This card has been here since day one. It has been a Demacia staple right alongside War Chef. Hasn't caught a nerf yet. We got dragons coming out now, but shit just works. When am I going to see a bird deck?
A bird deck? Did you just ask what
I want birds, man.
Deck?
I want more Fleet Feathers. I want more,
Swiftwing?
What is the... Yeah, Swiftwings. I want a bird archetype. Why are you giving me dragons? Well, the dragons feel like birds in this game anyway. They're all vanilla. Now I want a pigeon deck.
I will say, it feels like there's not a whole lot of subtypes in this game. Because what do we have? Poro, Spider, Dragon, Elnuk, Yeti.
And that's it. Unless you want to count... so Heimerdinger's turrets do have a typing. I think it's mech.
Oh, mech. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But that's no, mech support.
Yeah, no, there's not. And
I guess they did it because they were thinking about opening themselves up to it in the future. We do know that Victor should be the Piltover and Zon champion coming in 2 months, so it'll be curious to see, because he is another inventor type in the lore. It'll be curious to see if he does have some mech stuff.
I'm not looking forward to it, because if this landmark has this much RNG, I can only imagine what they're going to do with Victor.
In League of Legends, I love Victor.
I love it. Yeah, I think he's a great champion in League. So, but in this game,
Sea Monsters. We forgot Sea Monsters.
Wow, how do we forget that?
I don't know. I guess in the back of my head,
we just watched a deep match too.
I think it's because the Sea Monster deck generally only plays 2 Sea Monsters. It's like Devourer and Abyssal Eye, and every now and then you'll see a third one pop up.
Those aren't Sea Monsters. That's deep.
Those are big fishies.
Yeah, but I think that's why, though. I don't think of them as sea monsters. I just think of them as, that's Nautilus and that's deep. That's it.
Yeah, I think the problem with sea monsters is that you think of them and then you think of Nautilus, who is not a sea monster but is their biggest supporter card.
Yeah, exactly.
So now on the side of Boss, I feel like we're just gonna watch him walk right into another riposte. These ripostes are devastating in the Demacia mirror. This came up a lot when Bannerman mirrors were kind of the hot tech for a while, where everybody was still kind of deciding on the spell lineup, and riposte just felt so backbreaking in the mirror if you didn't have it, because this is barrier is a difficult keyword for Demacia to deal with. And
all right, we were talking about this in the last time we saw a similar matchup where these combat tricks come in big. Now, Garretz, granted, is not really drawing great as far as keeping up a field presence versus BlackBoss, and BlackBoss might start to pull ahead a little bit here with these Radiant Guardians and the Leona and the Genevieve, but can we just talk about how much Garretz is milking one Fleet Feather Tracker and basically just absolutely destroying BlackBoss's field with this one bird?
He hasn't even gotten down the Shen yet.
Yeah, he still hasn't even gotten down Shen, and this Fleet Feather Tracker is just doing work. It blows my mind how good these barrier spells and these combat tricks can be, like Riposte. And yeah, we have Shen coming next, so if we get the Shen down, we have another way to remove probably something, at least the Shield Bearer on the side of BlackBoss's field. And yeah, things are looking at least okay for Garretz with not the greatest hand so far.
I think Boss, really waiting until the last second to decide if it's worth it to develop here.
It's awkward.
It's so awkward. Garretz is playing this one beautifully. And yeah, it's going to be a Leona, and that does mean that the full board can get wiped by this Genevieve now.
Yeah, wow. Genevieve going to be very, very nice. There goes the stun. And really, You have a single combat in hand on the side of BlackBoss, but again, Garrett's playing this so that BlackBoss is in a situation where the single combat is not really online. It's not going to get the best value that it could. So this will kill the Leona here. We could... And no, we're probably just not going to see a single combat come out.
Yeah, I've never loved the way that some players do use the single combat. It's kind of like we saw Garretz use it a little bit earlier, where you throw it out onto, my Fiora is dying, so let me try and just kind of kill your weakest unit with my guy that's already dying.
Yeah.
I felt like there are a lot better uses for single combat in a matchup like this, and I feel like we're about to watch BlackBoss just walk into the third riposte and
because why not?
What else are you gonna do? What else are you gonna do? You definitely go for this Fleet Feather Tracker kill, and then you go for the Genevieve, but riposte is just such a dominating card in this matchup, and he's still we're just gonna
don't do it.
Spirit's Refuge looks really weird to me here.
Why would you do that? Why? What does this even do? All this does, this is okay. To me, this is Garrett's really overthinking playing mind games with the BlackBoss. He's thinking, well, if I play Spirit's Refuge, BlackBoss is not going to put me on riposte, so he's going to start playing weird. And this, I don't entirely understand that. I don't agree with it, but we'll see. I mean, now the Genevieve is on 1 health. I don't know if that's going to matter at all, but you never know. This does also allow him to... No, it would have been the same mana. He would have still been able to get Shen down. Yeah. That's weird.
I'm a little confused by that one as well, and now we are actually going to see the single combat to take out the Shen.
Huh.
Which, so if you had reposted the Fleet Feather Tracker and then Boss responded with the single combat to try and kill your Genevieve, you still have a Spirit's Refuge for the Genevieve as well.
Yeah, that was weird.
I don't know, that one definitely seems a little bit weird to me, but Garrett's still in a commanding position because he does still have this riposte, and I really don't think Boss... Just going for another pass, though, I am a little concerned at... how long Garretz seems to be taking to win this game, but Boss doesn't play the late game as well. As we had mentioned, there's no Ravoon in this deck, and Garretz, of course, has that Bright Steel formation, so if we can get to turn 9, Garretz should be advantaged. Doesn't have the card just yet, but,
Yeah, that was really a weird turn on the side of Garretz. The other thing, too, is that we don't even have the mana to play the riposte this turn with a unit if we do develop this dragon. So... if that was the train of thought by Garretz to bluff that he doesn't have a riposte and BlackBoss doesn't play around it now, it won't matter this turn if we get this dragon down. So not only that, there's a single combat in BlackBoss's hand. I don't know. I think that might have been a misplay on the side of Garretz, but we'll see. I mean, if this riposte comes up big later on, then it might come in handy, kind of having that one up over BlackBoss.
So I want to take a look at this Radiant Guardian here for a second, because I feel like she actually got a bad beat on the most recent patch. I feel like...
you don't say.
I feel like what Radiant Guardian should have done... All right, bear with me here. Keep her as a 5/5. And say if you play her when a unit died, give her -1 attack, lifesteal, and tough.
Oh, so that if you play her naked, she's still a 5/5.
Yeah.
Well, and lifesteal too, right? So -1 attack, lifesteal, and tough.
Yeah. So naked 5/5, 4/5 tough lifesteal.
That seems... I get where you're going with that. That just seems really awkward, as a card in general. Like what card in any card game do you know where it's if you meet this criteria, you get a debuff and a buff?
I think there are a lot of cards that will do something to minus their attack and buff up their defense, or vice versa.
Maybe in
it's
Magic.
Kind of the same.
I don't know. I definitely get where you're going with that, but they probably... I don't know. I still think she's good. If you get her effect off with tough and lifesteal, she's still great.
She's fine. She's okay.
Yeah, but it does feel bad that she doesn't trade with those 5-cost units quite as well now. But we'll see if it's able to make an impact here. Unfortunately, BlackBoss having to play Radiant Guardian without the buff this turn. And we'll see if Garretz is able to continue to play around this here. Drawing a deny, possibly with good timing here, because BlackBoss doesn't currently have any spells, but now any spell drawn will essentially get negated if it's something like a single combat from Garretz.
It looks like Garretz might just straight up go for this concerted strike onto the Screeching Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Or would have to throw it down onto this Shield Bearer in order to actually get his Screeching Dragon up to a 5/6. I'm a little surprised he didn't wait until combat to do this. just to try and get that surprise factor, stop Boss from attacking with both units. But I mean, Boss really not inclined to attack with either unit at this point, and even if he does, Garretz still has either barrier spell that he could possibly want to try and prevent that from happening. We will have to see if he is going to go on the aggressive here with this. I mean, does have that deny for the judgment in the single combat, really has to fear nothing here.
Yeah, and this is where we were talking, we've mentioned this a billion times by now. All of these spells, all these tools that Garretz has, I mean, as long as Garretz is able to keep just this lone dragon on the field, 100% going to be in the driver's seat, just has way more tools than the BlackBoss. Now, with that said, BlackBoss will be able to get down a Radiant Guardian, but crucially, not until Garretz is now at a 6 attack unit. So this is a big deal. We'll be able to concerted strike. It looks like that is what Garretz is going to go ahead and do here, and it's going to yet again get one of these Fury effects, Fury stack, I should say, onto the Screeching Dragon. God, this card is so good.
One of the problems that I had with Boss's deck is that you don't have concerted strike, but you do have Hush, and there have been a lot of situations in this matchup, this Leona Fiora versus this Shen Fiora so far, where it felt like the Hush would actually be a really big difference maker. So, I mean, if you just replace the Hushes with concerted strikes, at the end of the day, Boss and Yang just didn't see them. It really doesn't make a difference what was in that slot.
Yeah, Hush would be big right now. I actually like that no block from Garretz. There's really no reason to, I think, use the barrier on the defensive there, especially when you have the lifesteal to get back up there anyways. So now you can just kind of play a little bit slower, get some additional stuff on field, and that is a hell of a draw. Wow.
That's a big one. Yeah, it's going to let this River Shaper live a little bit more. Not only get additional spells to his hand, but really thin his deck out of those so that he can get closer to those units and ideally get a Brightsteel formation here sometime soon to really close out the game.
Now, do you put the barrier with the Shen onto the Screeching Dragon and then try to get like the Radiant Guardian to block this this River Shaper here? Maybe blow him out with the repost?
You might be going in with just the Shen and the River Shaper to try and repost the Shen if the Radiant Guardian comes out as a blocker.
Well, we'll see what Garretz decides to do here. There are a lot of different ways to go ahead with this combat on the side of Garretz. Everything we just mentioned, totally plausible. There's a lot of different ways to play this. All right, actually looks like going to go in with everything here, putting the barrier on the River Shaper. This forces the block onto the Shen with the Radiant Guardian, of which won't matter, because as we see, there's plenty of barriers in hand. Plenty of responses to everything that the BlackBoss could possibly do.
Hush is the only thing you have to be even a little bit worried about at this point. So as long as you just continue to play around that as effectively as possible, I don't think there's any way that the game slips away from Garretz.
Yeah, and even Hush right now, even if you try to kill this Screeching Dragon in combat and you Hush it and it goes back down, you still have a barrier to protect it after the fact. So
you also have a second instance of Hush to turn that one off.
Well, yeah, depending on whether or not the mana is still there, for sure.
Yeah.
But just, I don't know, man. Again, all these spells. It's like you don't even really care about having additional units in your deck if you're Garretz, because you have all these spells to protect the units anyways. And we've seen this same Screeching Dragon on the field for what, 5 or 6 turns now?
He's been here a while.
Like, it's insane.
Oh, don't attack the River Shaper. Okay, I thought we were about to get reposted off of the River Shaper, and then the River Shaper like single combat into something else as well with a Spirit Thread. Just like draw as many spells as humanly possible. But yeah, I mean, this riposte now comes up big here, going to counter out another Genevieve. This is disastrous. Genevieve is Boss's top end. This is supposed to be his game-winning unit, and so far it has just been canceled by a 4-mana burst spell for the second time.
Yeah, the power of those combat tricks yet again, and still has all these buffed up units, but in all reality, Garretz doesn't have to be too worried because we still have this Spirit's Refuge as lifesteal, and we're going to go ahead and rip it out now. Gonna just straight up trade with the Radiant Guardian, and on top of that, basically go back to full, and yeah, that's going to get the surrender out of BlackBoss.
Now, it would go back to full. It'd put it at a 9-3. That would allow it to challenge the Daybreak unit on the side of the field of Boss on the following turn. And now we are going to get this Leona Fiora deck up against the Twisted Fate Swain.
Yeah, so let's see how this goes. We've seen plenty of Twisted Fate Swain. Still, for like, I don't know, maybe 3 months this deck has been around now? 4 months?
Longer than that.
Yeah, probably.
It's been around since then. Actually,
Wait, May?
legitimately has been close to 6 months.
Yeah, wait, no, May was when Rising Tides came out, right?
Yeah, it was April 30th, I
So
think.
May, June, July, August, September. So
This
5
came
plus
out
months. So
too
almost
long,
6 months. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So wow. Yeah. And yeah, it started becoming popular right when the set dropped, right? This was one of the first decks that people had come up with.
It took a few weeks for it to catch on because I remember I was really invested in this deck, and I reached out to the guy that made it, or like first won a tournament with it. I don't remember who it was exactly. It was one of the big name P players that doesn't play anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, like Prismat, Presto.
Oh, Prismat. What happened to Prismat, man?
I don't know. I missed that guy.
Yeah, I miss his robe.
He was the best player cam in NA.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Always looked like he was just like woke up at the Playboy Mansion and was like, I guess I'll play some Runeterra today. But yeah, it was a deck that didn't pop up in the top 8 a lot, but every time it popped up in the top 8, it won the tournament.
Yeah, for sure. And still winning tournaments today. Still one of the most popular decks, if not the most popular today as well. And we see it here. We'll see if Garretz is able to pilot it to a victory 2-1 over the BlackBoss. Not an easy opponent. Everybody knows the BlackBoss. So we'll see if BlackBoss, though, is able to pick up a win with Judgment in the opening hand. When or where will this card see some play? We'll see if it's going to be in this match finally.
Yeah. So I really like the Twisted Fate Swain deck conceptually because what do we have for words like this? It's kind of like Patron Warrior, where it's not necessarily a deck that the designers thought of. This is something that was very community built, whereas something like Shen Fiora feels a little obvious. Sea Monsters, again, a little obvious, something that like the devs really pushed on you as an archetype. But Twisted Fate Swain feels a little bit more like just combos that the community found a little bit later on. I don't think this was necessarily something the devs had in mind when they built either of these champions.
I just had flashbacks. Did you just say Patron Warrior?
Yeah. I know that a lot of people were upset when it was nerfed because it was a deck that the community built. It wasn't something that was very obvious from the start, and it was workshopped by thousands of people to become one of the best decks in the format, and TF Swain sort of feels the same way to me.
Yeah, but that deck was very, very, very good. Like, that was too good. Like, at once everybody knew about Patron Warrior, it was impossible to beat it. Like, you had to play Patron Warrior in your lineup, otherwise you just were not playing the game right. Wow. But yeah, I mean, and that's a good point because TF Swain, basically you have to play TF Swain and you give yourself a much better chance. Because TF Swain, the thing too is it doesn't really have a bad matchup. Like, yeah, sure, it probably has lower win percentages versus some matchups. But as we've seen, it basically, you know, you have the Twisted Fate route of card advantage. You have the Swain Leviathan as just finishing potential as well as control. So there's just so many different routes that this deck can take to actually win the game that it doesn't really feel like it has a weakness.
No, in my experience, Twisted Fate Swain's worst matchup was Trundle Swain, which is just another Swain deck that had a lot more defensive tools than you did. But one of the reasons that this deck has been able to stick around for so long is it's been in a lot of lineups across the board. Noxus and Bilgewater for a long time were relatively underused regions, and this was always sort of the deck that you throw in at the end of a lineup. But it was never a deck that was picked on. Even though I was able to find 1 or 2 bad matchups for it, I don't think anybody has ever brought a 3-deck lineup that was able to consistently pick on the Twisted Fate Swain.
Yeah, 100%. Got to agree with you there. And we do have the attack token on the side of BlackBoss. Still has not used it yet. We'll see if Garretz develops here into BlackBoss's attack. We do have the Petty Officer we can go ahead and play, which doesn't really get punished too much in this matchup for having that 1 health. Judgment Judgment would kill anything no matter what if we actually see that played. And then House Spider essentially accomplishes a similar thing to Petty Officer right now. It does look like we are going to go ahead and go with the Petty Officer, which we'll see if we get something like a Make It Rain because of this keg. Make It Rain right now. Actually, if BlackBoss does go forward with this attack, Make It Rain would clip the Shield Bearer, and depending on what the Protege challenges, okay, this is actually a great Make It Rain from Garretz.
And it looks like, okay, when he put back the Petty Officer, I thought he might be going for the Spiderling specifically to play around this Make It Rain.
Yeah, and I definitely would not hate that, knowing, you know, that there is a Make It Rain in Garrett's hand. And, I mean, BlackBoss has got to figure there's probably a Make It Rain in there too, right? So it feels a little bit bad, but looks like opting to not play around it. We are going to get to Make It Rain, and that is a sweet, sweet trade for Garretz this early.
This is one of the problems. Like, Demacia just really doesn't feel like it handles the format super well. It doesn't handle kegs well. It doesn't handle barriers well. Even if you had the single combat here to kill this keg, trading single combat for a Make It Rain is a trade that Garretz is going to be more than happy to take, since that is your only removal spell.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, they'll be able to deal with stuff like that when Shyvana comes out. Yeah, dude, cannot wait to make that.
You say when it comes out, like it's not 48 hours from.
Well,
now.
yeah,
not
you
even
know,
48 hours.
2
because
more days.
It's nighttime on Monday.
2 more days over there.
We're like 36 hours away from Shyvana.
Oh man.
We should have had a countdown clock going from
Yeah,
Thursday stream where we just have up in the corner days until Shyvana.
That card's gonna be so good. Like, I was hyped for Aurelion Sol, but then after we've played with Aurelion Sol, I'm like not too crazy.
You got
about
bored
him.
of him quick.
Yeah, nobody cares about Aurelion Sol anymore. Now it's all about
Especially
Shyvana.
now that he's been nerfed up to 25 power on board to level. I have not seen an ASOL deck since people tried to continue Ramp Soul day 1.
Yeah, too hard really to get that much power on board. Shyvana just seems
Dragons,
so wholesome.
Oh yeah. The one thing that I am a little afraid of is one of the spoilers that we saw today. That was another direct rip of a Hearthstone card where your next dragon or so costs 2 less.
Oh yeah, yep.
That means you can curve that into Aurelion Sol on 8.
Seems good.
Seems real good. And maybe that's what it takes. I mean, I don't know if the dragon decks are actually going to play Aurelion Sol. He might be too late game for them, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, because they're trying to do mid-range. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, so I am really curious to see how these dragon decks actually do play out. I am very curious about that, because I really liked dragons in Hearthstone, but that was mostly because of the Nab dragon.
They do make it very obvious, though, that they do want Demacia to be both a mid-range dragon archetype, but then to also combo with Targon to be a control late-game Aurelion Sol archetype. So... Targon. Jeez, I don't know why I said Targon.
It sounded like you tried to pronounce it like dragon.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why I said that. Targon.
Is that what we're going to call Demacia dragons? Or are we just going to call it Targons?
Targons.
Just try to pronounce that word like dragon and hope people pick up on it. How would we even type that out?
Oh, man. Oh, plus, yeah, we have, like Skyblue mentioned in chat, too, we have the KDA cards coming, too.
I haven't seen them. I have been so behind on Legends of Runeterra news because I've been casting for the last 3 days. I haven't actually gotten to look into this stuff. I don't know anything about the KDA cards. My friends after my cast yesterday were hitting me up like, "Oh yeah, we have to play Runeterra now for the KDA stuff." I'm like, "What KDA stuff are you talking about?" They linked me the YouTube video. I'm like, I didn't learn anything here. I just saw KDA dancing and the Runeterra symbol in the bottom.
Sounds about right. Yeah, there's no new cards with that though, is there? It's just like a map.
Telling me that they're printing spells based on the KDA champions on the 28th.
Really? So we're gonna get additional releases?
That sounds like it, which is weird to me. But I mean, hey, that's the beautiful thing about being a caster. This doesn't mean anything to me.
What? Oh my god!
You can put in all the new cards that you want. It don't matter to me.
Oh man, well we'll see when those cards come out. That's gonna be crazy if they do add some additional cards. That'll be pretty cool. So, all right. So back to the game though. We do have the Leona going in for the attack here on the side of BlackBoss.
Back to the game. Let's talk about these KDA.
Are they? Well, are they? Where are they?
I'm just messing with you. Let's get back to the game. So we are going to see the block onto the Leona just to prevent a little bit of damage. I don't think you want to be committing your guillotine here. There is a lot of value to be found through boss a little bit later on. Honestly, I'm a little surprised not to see as many combat tricks out of boss, even though we've seen this punished by the riposte out of the Shen Fiora deck a lot. I'm a little surprised not to see any bastions for a deck that does play some more protectable units. Maybe if we had Ravun in here, we would consider playing Protect the Leona Ravun combo with something like a Bastion, but I even feel like it's not a bad hit down onto something like a Genevieve.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we'll see if Garretz has any sort of response for now. Doesn't look like it, but Garretz very much still seems to be in control of this game. In really no rush to put this one away either. I mean, he has Twisted Fate, which will probably be sticking around unless we do get this single combat out of BlackBoss. It's going to come down soon, though, because this Twisted Fate leveling up is not going to be fun whatsoever. It's going to be hard to get something like this pick a card off, like, with BlackBoss not having enough mana for single combat. Like, I don't really ever see that being a thing. So
Probably not, but I think you might be able to sort of sneak the Zap Spray Fin in and sort of get this Twisted Fate close enough to the level that boss either sort of misses it and you just level it organically without this pick a card, or, I mean, maybe you just pick a card for a better hand. You know, going into turn 8, Garretz doesn't have any of those bigger threats that you would normally want, so I don't think it's necessarily unreasonable to fire off this pick a card just to look for an 8-drop, especially since you know that it is going to force a single combat out of BlackBoss onto an understated unit.
And if you don't play the pick a card, there is a second TF now, so we could just end up sticking the second TF. It's probably still going to be able to stick around. I mean, we do have some challenger units and whatnot to deal with them, so we'll see if BlackBoss is able to fight for the board a little bit better in coming turns here. But Garretz, I mean, with the way Garrett's hand is kind of panning out too, there's really no aggression. There's no proactive things that Garretz can do. He just kind of has to sit back, relax, and wait for his puzzle pieces to come to him, like Leviathan, like Swain, like if he can actually get this TF leveled up. With BlackBoss being able to stick something like this Fiora, things could get dangerous if Garretz isn't able to remove the Fiora, but we do see we have the Ravenous Flock, we have Death's Hand, we have Guillotine, we have plenty of removal to go ahead and get rid of this Fiora if it does start to get out of hand.
Guillotine is not what I thought we would be chucking away to this pick-a-card. My natural instinct was sort of the House Spider that feels a little bit past its prime here on turn 7. I still like the Zap Spray Fin play, but we might just see a burst pass out of Garretz here. For how much passing he's been doing, I don't see a reason not to burst pass. Especially because you know that boss has to commit the single combat right here, right now, or you just could to slam the end turn button and draw those 4 cards with the Twisted Fate on field.
Yeah, so we'll see if BlackBoss does decide to end up using the single combat proactively here. I imagine, I don't know. I mean, do you?
Oh, I think I would slam end turn there.
Yeah, just to get those draws off. So wait, now it's at 4?
I think now it's at 4, but there is a chance that you would have drawn either a Salvage or a Leviathan off of the top would have leveled the Twisted Fate anyway, as it does draw a Swain from your deck.
Yep. Yeah, and that's half the battle is leveling the TF in the first place. You know, as long as you, even if you only get 1 or 2 cards off before it dies the first time, you are then able to draw into the second one leveled up, and that is a huge difference. Wow, no way.
You never, I mean, I guess at this point, Garretz has to assume that there's no single combat out of boss, and he can just go for the attack.
Oof, that's, I don't know, man.
But I'm not sure why boss would put himself in this situation. Maybe trying to line up no, because a judgment never happens here.
Listen, we need to get over judgment. Judgment's never happening.
It's in the hand.
It's never happening.
There's a Fiora on field. This is where it happens.
When I see judgment in hand, I just imagine that there's just one less card in hand. That's what that is.
If we were in person, I would grab you by your face and look you in the eyes and tell you, this is what dreams are made of. This is where the judgment happens and gets value.
I mean, that would be amazing. Oh, well, actually, we're on 6 mana, so.
Yeah, well.
We can't play, never mind.
This is where, like, you then grab me by the face and slam my head.
There's not enough mana, damn it!
Boulevard. He doesn't have the mana. There's not enough resources, you madman.
Oh, looks like we are at least going to get the 2 elusive attacks, though. Maybe he was trying to go for something like the Hush to kill one of the elusives. That doesn't feel right either. Okay, yeah. So now do we get the single combat?
We don't. He says, you know what? Level the Twisted Fate. See if I care.
I mean, wow.
Here's my thought process. You're going into this tournament. You're you know, playing with your friends, your teammates, and they look at this deck list that you have. Never mind, the TF's only at 7 out of 8.
Yeah, but, well, no, the concern was drawing into like a salvage or something. So if he doesn't,
even like Zap Spray Fin here levels the Twisted Fate.
If he doesn't kill this immediately, okay, well that
it's
works
just gonna
too.
Hush it.
Okay. So
weird flex, but okay.
Yeah, it seems odd, like an odd way to deal with the TF.
I mean, Hush doesn't get a lot of value in this matchup outside of blocking Zap Spray Fins.
I guess, so maybe that's why he's not wanting to use the single combat on something like a TF when he can get more value. So that's, if that's the case, that's actually pretty smart now that I think about it.
And I mean, we miscounted the Twisted Fate. We thought it was a 4 out of 8 after the Spray Fin there. We thought it was leveling at start of turn, but with it not happening, these plays make a fair bit more sense.
So we are going to, looks like, get the Ravenous Flock onto the Genevieve. I don't see why not. We do have another TF in hand. which can be a pick a card. We'll see if that's the route we end up going. I imagine we'll just end up summoning another Twisted Fate, though.
Yeah, so this Make It Rain right here is why I did not like shuffling away the Noxian Guillotine instead of the House Spider.
Or even the Twisted Fate's red card, you know, if we do summon the next Twisted Fate.
Yeah, which, I mean, we might. We do still have... It looks like we're going to use a Fleeting Death's Hand here, and that means that we do still have a Twisted Fate and a Make It Rain as our fleeting cards for the turn. Still no 8-drop found by Garretz, though. And, you know, maybe Boss does have to consider here. You know, he opened the turn with a Death's Hand. That screams Riptide Rex. Do I have to go for the open attack here instead of the Scout attack? And that is going to be the case.
Yeah.
I said open attack, but I meant non-Scout
I
attack.
knew what you meant. I appreciate
that.
The open attack is just the default verbiage that we used, no matter what.
I'm trying to figure out what do I call it when I mean, like, he has a Scout attack, but instead takes the normal attack.
The deferral of the Scout attack.
Yeah, skips Combat 1, goes straight to Combat 2.
So it looks like we're going to get the Make It Rain out and hope that it hits the 5/3 so we can Death's Hand it and then Ravenous Flock the other one. Maybe that's kind of the game plan here. I mean, if the Make It Rain hits the 3/2 Fleet Feather, we also get a decent trade. If it misses the Fiora, we can then... I mean, there's a lot of options.
Okay, never mind. We're just full on taking out the Fiora, so now the single combat should be forced, but unless it goes specifically onto this Fiora, and I think it will go down from the Fiora onto this Twisted Fate, don't see a reason to use any other unit, that does mean that the Ravenous Flock will not be an option to take that one out.
But it will be able to take out the Genevieve if Garretz wants to go ahead and play that in response, which... I don't see why not. I mean, it does save your Zap Spray Fin at that point. It does prevent the Genevieve from surviving. It looks like, yep, you were right. We do get the single combat. No Judgment. This would have been great to Judgment. Too bad we don't have the mana for Judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, because we started off the turn hushing the Twisted Fate.
Jesus, this freaking card, man.
Look, man, Judgment's not going to get value. I mean, Swain Twisted Fate might have the most removal in the game.
Oh, yeah.
It's not unreasonable that we're never getting off the Judgment in this matchup. And let's see if this Make It Rain... Can it dodge the 2/1 health units? Is this the worst Make It Rain of the weekend? It's not. It at least kills the Genevieve.
Yeah, it could have been much worse. So
It was close. It was close, though.
Yeah.
Especially because we are discarding this Twisted Fate at end of turn as beautifully as we would have set ourselves up for a red card would not have been possible.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. I mean, that feels really bad. And now you're... Okay, well... Never mind.
Now start on the window. We got a Leviathan, baby.
I was going to say, now you're not in the greatest spot as Garretz.
I was going to say, whatever dumb thing was about to come out of your mouth is negated by the Leviathan top deck.
Oh, man. Leviathan.
Happens all the time.
The champion Leviathan. That's right. You heard that right. The champion. It's a champion, damn it.
Oh, it's not a champion. It is not a champion. I mean, it's the best boat by a long shot, but you don't play this without Swain. I know I've joked about it in the past, but you don't play this without Swain.
Oh, man. I don't know. Do you?
No. Actually, I was playing against someone on ladder once, and I nabbed a Leviathan out of their deck and had to quadruple check to ensure that they were not a Swain deck, and they weren't.
Wow. Okay.
And I was really confused by it, but I was like, okay, I guess I just have a Leviathan now.
You haven't seen that new Leviathan burn deck floating around?
Apparently I did, and I hard-bodied it with its own Leviathan.
So this Leviathan, though, should do some work here because Hush won't do much to do anything about it if okay. Not attacking.
I mean, I like the pass. You are on a 3-turn clock out of this Leviathan, and the attack doesn't necessarily accelerate that, but it does open you up to a single combat killing your Leviathan before you can actually get off that little bit of damage.
Yeah, and I think that will actually be game now. Or actually... 3. Okay, well, knowing what's in BlackBoss's hand after this challenge on the Leviathan, it doesn't look like. Unless, are we gonna play the Judgment and chat?
That'd be wild. I mean, now, even Judgmenting in response to this Flock doesn't do anything because the unit still dies before combat happens. You are still just outside of the range of that Fleet Feather tracker.
You do have Guardian and then Daybreak too, so
yeah.
There's, or what is that? I always forget the name of that. Is that Morning Sun?
Morning Light?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's actually not going to be that bad of a turn when everything's said and done for the BlackBoss. But, again, expending all of his mana, guess what he can't play? Guess what he can't play, Boulevard? Guess what card?
Judgment?
It's freaking Judgment. Yep. God.
It's so hard to get Judgment OTKs with Fiora when you're not playing Riposte.
It's so hard to play Judgment when you can't play Judgment ever because it's a terrible card.
I think this is also lethal here. We have the Fervor to dodge the lifesteal out of this Radiant Guardian, and that should mean that the Leviathan will finish off the game. I'm not actually looking at Boss's hand at the moment. I don't think he has a single combat, though.
No, he just has the Morning Light, a Hush, and a Judgment. So, okay, so no,
I mean, actually, yeah, so I guess you do have judgment here.
Yeah, we do actually have Judgment.
We're going to see it. We're going to see the Judgment, because otherwise you lose the game. You have to do it here. Yay!
Hey, we have a Judgment!
The problem, though, is that Garretz still has the mana to get down a Swain. So your entire board is getting stunned next turn anyway, and then the Swain Leviathan combo, I believe, does represent lethal damage. But you do have a Hush to unstun some of your units and use them as blockers.
Is that really what Judgment's been reduced to? That's the high end of Judgment right there. Is that the upper end of Judgment's value?
Oh, I'm sorry. He killed 2 units and gained 8 life and negated a Noxian Fervor. Is that not good enough for you?
For 8 mana, it's not. No way.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, beggars can't be choosers, all right? Sometimes you got to pay 8 mana to not lose the game.
Oh, man. Well, I think we still lose the game.
We're about to see 7 mana not to lose the game, as the Hushes should come down on the boss's units to line them up as blockers onto these. But that does mean that the lifesteal is going to be off the table for the Radiant Guardian if that is one of the blockers that you want to use. And I think it is one of the ones that you have to use.
Yep. Looks like he agrees. Going to line that up onto the Swain. And considering just taking the Leviathan, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, what is this Leona really doing? That's one of the problems that I had with this deck build, is that with Shield Bearer and, Soldier being the only Daybreak cards aside from Leona, we really don't see a leveled Leona, and even if we did, it doesn't feel impactful without Ravoon alongside her, so we do have another Leona in hand. What do we really care about this one for?
I don't think we do. I think that Leona in general is kind of just like a one-trick pony. You bring her out one turn to get that stun. Maybe you're able to combo, another Morning Light or something like we see in hand at some point. But
in all fairness, I do think that this Morning Light is your best avenue to victory on the side of boss. So probably unwilling to lose that Leona. But I mean, you're not even necessarily putting yourself in a win or lose position on the following turn due to the Leviathan damage, just because you are going to have this Radiant Guardian survive the turn. It will be a 6 attack unit on the following turn. And, maybe you can actually use this to climb yourself back into the game, but you still don't have a way to kill the Leviathan. And now this Guillotine is going to be the final nail in the coffin for BlackBoss, as this does take the sort of stabilization of the Radiant Guardian completely off the table.
Yep, that's going to feel bad knowing that it's going to bite the dust there. We will have the Morning Light. And actually, no, the Morning Light will not be able to heal that and get it back up to outside of that Noxian Guillotine range. So looks like this is probably going to be over after the attack from BlackBoss comes through. Even if... Yeah, if the Noxian Guillotine hits the actually it doesn't even matter because everything's getting stunned. So what are we talking about?
We're talking about how bad this Leona's looking. She is out of sorts.
Oh my god. Yeah, this deck and Kid Cudi, man, I am just so at a loss for words as to what the actual win condition is for those decks.
So you're not a fan of the Leona decks as a whole?
Yeah, I hate Leona.
How do you feel about I've seen a couple people take the Lux Asol deck and turn it into Lux Leona.
The Lux if there's a deck that I'm okay with Leona, it's Lux Leona, but it's only because Lux is in the deck. Like it's not because of Leona, it's just because Lux is a card generation behemoth with those final sparks if you can get those off. But I don't know, man, Leona just doesn't feel like a good champion. All right, Garrett's taking BlackBoss down there, so pretty good stuff. Exciting gameplay for sure. And if you guys want some more information on these tournaments, go ahead. There will be a link to the Discord server in the description below. Again, this is a Brazilian league, so the language is primarily Portuguese. So just keep that in mind if you are considering getting involved with the Discord server. There are some English-speaking sub-servers in there, some channels. But for the most part, learn some Portuguese. I know I'm trying to learn some Portuguese. I got some apps and stuff my phone. I'm doing my best, guys. I'm doing my best. All right. But as always, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.